Hey everyone, welcome to the Awareness Podcast with your host, Bill Free. And as you know, this podcast is Conversations in Truth, where people contact me or I contact them. I look for interesting interviews that would be uh, entertaining, but also helpful for listeners that are on the path of awakening. It is definitely a spiritual kind of interview. The things that are interesting for me, I think, would be interesting to our audience in the journey of awakening. And today I have a fella named Jim Gillette. He is retired, I think. We can talk about that in a minute. But he's been in one of our book studies recently. He was a co-host, and he had such an interesting kind of a story that the things that were kind of leaking out as we were talking about the book study. I thought, man, I want to bring this guy onto the Awareness Podcast. And welcome, Jim. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure, Jim. And as I was saying, now I'm just going to kind of be open and casual a little bit. Now, I think we're close to the same age. You're retired, right?
I am retired. I will be 79 in a few months.
Oh, you're much older than me.
Much older than you.
Oh, well, if I'm looking like you in 10 years, I'll be super happy with that.
Well, yeah, you look very young.
Yeah, you look good, man, for almost 80.
Thank you.
That's cool. Well, that's awesome. I'm happy that I mean, age is the bodysuit does retire, and then it dies. And the thing that gets me really excited about conversations around death, life and death, and those kinds of things is that this isn't, this is just a temporary kind of a avatar. We have this experience in these body-mind, bodysuit, personal self identities. And when we find the spiritual path, I mean, there are many paths out there, many traditions of awakening, and many traditions that are religious, and they are more of an experience of I don't know, living in society and trying to know God and those kinds of things. That's what drew me to the spiritual path, was Christianity, religious things. And then when I discovered that wasn't quite it, I found out, oh my God, it's so much better. The spiritual path is the piece that Jesus was actually pointing to, and we missed it. He was pointing the religious leaders of the Jewish religious leaders, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, all of those people around Jerusalem and Israel. He was trying to help them to wake up from the dogma, the religious misconception of who and what God is. And Christianity uses his teachings, and they put it down another rabbit hole. Yeah. But that was my original path, was Christianity. I'm very grateful for it, because it disconnected me from the path of drugs and alcohol and things that weren't healthy. They weren't helpful for a young man to grow up in. I mean, you have to let that stuff go, or it'll take you early.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing you say that. It reminded me something I haven't thought of in a long, long time. Was in my early days. Now, I had Christian. I went to church. I wasn't strongly encouraged by my family. My father's father had been a Christian minister, and then I think he rebelled. He was a musician. He didn't force anything on me. But when I was in college, I was starting to question everything. And I remember going to a Unitarian, like a Wednesday night meeting, and there was all adult men, and I was the only like young guy there at the table. But the minister, I think that's what he was called, said, I would not start another prayer with our Father in heaven. I would choke first. And I mean, as a young guy, I was sort of, that sort of sealed it for me. Then I spent time trying to figure out, am I an atheist or an agnostic? You know, when you're young, you're looking for still, you're trying to figure out things. And I remember when I found Zen, I was in graduate school, and a friend said, oh, why don't you read this book, Alan Watts, The Way of Zen? And I really took to Zen because, and one of the reasons was it never used the word God. And it had what I wanted, but I didn't have to work my way through religious doctrine to get there. Now, you can turn anything into doctrine. There's doctrine everywhere. Our mind almost wants to create doctrine. But that's how I got started.
What age was that when you had
that would put me at about let's see, maybe 21, 22, around in there.
Wow, that's a perfect time to have that introduction.
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah. And also back then, PBS, now I'm starting to remember this. When I'd go home to visit, there was these black and white shows. I'd watch Alan Watts on TV talking, and I'd get my dad to join with me sometimes. And also J Krishnamurti had a program, and I could hear him talking. And so these were like, you know, and then, gosh, all this is coming back. This was in my era, this was in graduate school I'm describing now. I studied Timothy Leary and what was the other fellow? The fellow who's now,
Ram Dass.
Yeah, Ram Dass now.
Yeah.
I studied them in textbooks. They were legitimate Harvard professors. And right during this time, everything was falling apart or reorganizing. And there was Timothy Leary, you know, so turn on, tune in, drop out. And so that was sort of the era that I started getting into all of this. Yeah.
Wow. And did you have a guru?
Well, my first instruction, I'll say, was at the Theosophical Society of Dallas.
Oh,
and
nice.
They had a disciple of Yogananda, and he taught us a type of meditation, which that was my start in meditation. But shortly after that, maybe 4 or 5 months, I was initiated into Transcendental Meditation. I had seen Maharishi on a video of him talking to Harvard students. And then also, I saw him when he was a guest on the Johnny Carson show. I was knocked out, this crazy little guy with a giggle. He would talk. And so that was an era that I really wanted to find something that would help me get to this place that they're all talking about. Right. So Maharishi, I never did use the word guru too much, but he was my teacher.
Yeah.
And I did go to India and listen to him talk about the teachings and the practice and all of that multiple times a day for months in India.
Did you go to Rishikesh to his ashram there?
Yes.
The one the Beatles went to, right?
Yeah.
They call that the Beatles ashram now.
That's what they do now. It's surely a tourist attraction, I'm sure. In fact, I've seen pictures and I can see the inside of what had been the assembly wall. And of course, there's a lot of graffiti-like stuff on it now, but I recognize the stage and what had been where I'd go multiple times every day to hear Maharishi talk. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I was there I walked that whole property 3 months ago.
No
For
kidding.
Oh yeah, I walked the whole property. We went with a dozen people, and we spent, I would say, 5 hours walking all the buildings and going in the buildings that you were in.
Wow, that's really very interesting to me. That
That
whole area it was such a fascinating area. And every day was, I mean, it was like we could hear elephants sometimes, we could hear peacocks all the time. There was monkeys outside my window all the time, and the crows. It wasn't like a quiet place like an
right.
ashram.
Well, and
It's supposed to, we
You
think
have the
it
Ganges
was
River
loud.
right there.
Yeah, yeah,
I saw monkeys in the trees when we were
yes,
there.
yes, yeah. There
Yeah,
was the monkeys, and I learned that there were also langurs, which are not quite a monkey. They're like a cross between a cat animal and a monkey. They just can climb very fast, but they can run. Of course, monkeys can run really fast too, but
yeah.
these really could run more like a leopard or something. And yeah,
Wow.
I'd come in contact with them. I guess you did too. Yeah.
No, I didn't see them. I did. I was really. I mean, I was really trying to uh, sort of connect with how these different buildings were used.
Yeah.
Where did you live? Did you live in one of those dome things?
Um, this is so funny to try to recreate in my mind. All I would say is the entranceway was up near did they even have the remnants of what the sort of the cafeteria had been? Could you tell where that was?
No, I couldn't tell where that
No
was.
plumbing remnants or anything. Okay.
No.
Well, for me, then you come in and you go past the mess hall type and you start going down. There's the assembly hall. Then there was a lot of dorm like buildings. I think
Yeah.
had total about maybe about 120 people there, and about 75, I think, were from the United States. But so I started in one of and they were building while we were there. They were just getting used to how larger numbers coming. And after I'd been there 1 month, it was a little crowded. They built what for me, it was a tree house. I'd go up steps, and in the structure, some of it had pillars of wood underneath, but part of it was leaning on a tree as well. So I'd go up in there, and I had my own little place, windows, a door, bathroom, and the distance from the first dorm to my tree house was where those domes you're describing were, and there was places we could go if we wanted to go in, and you'd have your own private, very sort of very quiet and dark, and I think I told you that it felt a little oppressive, the vibrational um, coming down on me as I'm trying to meditate. It was pretty strong. And rather than interpret it as something I ought to be doing, I decided, no, I think I'm going to go back to my tree house. And I got up to about 12 hours a day meditating, but I did it in where I was living in this little place.
Okay, that's a long time. That for me, that's a long meditation.
It's very long, and they would have us build up to it. Like 1 week,
Right.
try to do 4 hours a day. Next week, 5 hours a day. And
Okay.
also, we did what was called rounding, which was include a little pranayama and some yoga asanas, because you just get too tightened up. And so every hour we would do a cycle, take about 5 or 10 minutes to do some yoga asanas, and then come back into meditation. And
What
that's
are
how,
yoga asanas?
pardon me?
What are yoga
Oh,
asanas?
postures, you probably
Okay.
know them.
Yeah.
Like maybe you have a sequence of, doing something, and we had maybe a sequence of about six. They taught us.
Yeah.
It's really a lot of stretching,
Yeah.
and
Right.
maybe it's easier to say it's good to stretch
Yeah.
once an hour while you're meditating. Yeah.
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 Did,
And by
how
the way,
long?
I should also take, there was a tapering off. After about 2.5 months, maybe 1 week into the third month, they had us start coming down. In other words, if you're doing about 12 hours a day, next week do 11, week after 10, because that's also not something you can just drop and come back into the world. I mean, you were pretty disoriented to go back out and walk around outside the compound. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long were you there?
About 3.5 months.
It was that the only place you stayed in India, or did you go somewhere else?
Well, I was in Delhi for a while. I've stayed in different hotels in Delhi, and I made 2 trips to Agra, one on my own and one with the group that had been up at the ashram. So I've ridden the regular train with even though it was called first class, it was very, very bare. But then I also took, I think, called the Taj Express from Delhi to Agra. Am I getting that right?
Mhm.
And then I've been in, oh gosh, another one, just passing through to take off. After that, I went to Cairo, Egypt, and
Oh, okay.
on my
Wow.
way home. So I didn't see a lot. I didn't spend a lot of time in southern India. Oh, I also went to Kashmir, Srinagar. So I stayed on a houseboat on Lake Dal for maybe 4 or 5, 6 days. That was pretty neat. That was beautiful up
Hmm.
in the Himalayas. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have an awakening experience while you were with the Maharishi?
This is so interesting. I had an awakening experience before I went to India. And in
Mm.
fact, what I was seeking was a way to sometimes feel like to return to it or stabilize it. And while I was in India, rather than having an awakening experience, and a lot of people, because these meetings we'd have during the day, they would come up and say, Maharishi, this has happened to me, and he would help them through what they were experiencing. For me, the India was more of a stabilizing, integrating, actually getting my feet back on the ground. So it was almost like a reversal. It helped me make sense of and give it the context, because I was pretty disoriented after the first awakening. And India really helped. Now, it continued my awakening, but it also gave me a foundation, a grounding. So, I mean, meditation can be very good in multiple directions. Yeah.
Yeah. And what age were you when you were with the
In
Maharishi?
India, I was 25.
Okay. Wow. So you did this as a single man before you
Yeah,
had met your wife or had
right,
kid. Do
right.
you have kids?
I have 2 children, and
Mhm.
I met my wife in India now, and she was there going through the course too, but she and I never talked. But because we had stayed past our visa length, the 3 month visa, we had to go to a special office in Delhi to get approval and get a stamp, so we wouldn't be stopped at the airport trying to get out or something. I don't know. But there in the lobby, waiting to see this, some official with the government, I started talking with her, and she was from Los Angeles. She was an Indian. She and I had just been through the same course. She, in fact, was the national course coordinator for the Transcendental Meditation movement, Student International Meditation Society, it was called, SIMS. And then we sort of got to know each other better, traveling back, and then corresponded. And I eventually, we got married and had children and lived in
Okay.
Los Angeles. That's how I got to Los Angeles. Met
Okay.
someone in India. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, did you when you went back to the U.S., you went back to Los Angeles, or
No, Austin.
you
That's
went
where
to
I was
Austin?
living at the time. I later moved to Los Angeles. So I was the first resident teacher of TM in Austin. And I used to give talks on the campus. We had some professor sponsored us as an organization, so I could get speaker rooms. And then I could also use the rooms for the following 3 days. So I'd usually do the initiations in someone's home, but I would do the introductory talks on campus. And I did that in a number of colleges in Texas at the time.
Okay. And when you were teaching the TM, would you say it was a training that people would have awakening experiences through?
We didn't use the term awakening much, if at all. We had a term that you would go into sort of like a conscious alertness. I can't remember the term used, but here's what I could say without giving a label and without presuming to know exactly. I can say I had in my initiation for TM, and this is why I became so enthusiastic and wanted to go to India, that in my initiation, I had another, to use the term maybe, awakening, similar to what I had done several years before. It continued to change my life. Now, not only was that my experience, but I observed while initiating many, many people be transformed right in front of my eyes. Now, whether that was a full awakening, but definitely within a matter of minutes, say within 30 minutes of this initiation, I would do a puja ceremony, give the mantra, help them get started. Within a couple minutes, and I have friends that look back and say the same thing. It was deep and profound. Now,
Right.
Whether we would call it awakening, I don't know.
Oh, so let's open that up. What would you call what is awakening to you?
Well, awakening, I now would say, is the recognition of awareness as awareness of awareness, recognition of my oneness, my true nature, maybe I would say. Yeah.
And it seems to me that, and this is why this is helpful for people to hear these ideas, these thoughts, these direct experiences, because I feel that a lot of people have awakening experiences like you had before going to India, but they don't know enough about it to know what it was, and
Yes.
and it they don't lose it, but they don't have an understanding that allows them to investigate it and then to recognize the nature of it is their beingness.
Right. And I agree with you completely. And I'd like to come back to this exact thing, because this is sort of, well, we can talk about this, but I want to also say that after 4 years of TM, I wanted to get something more rigorous. I mean, I was a pretty serious guy about this stuff, and it was becoming more popular and the prices were going up, and I was getting a little turned off by the movement, not by the practice. So I was initiated on another path by a person I might have called my guru, named Charan Singh. He had a Sikh background, but the practice was Radhasoami. And they asked there was for, and I was a strict vegetarian, no alcohol, no drugs, all that stuff, and meditate 2.5 hours a day. Try to, because man, that is pretty tough while raising a family, doing a business. But I got up at 4:30 every morning, 7 days a week, for 19 years. And it was a path that said no dogma, no doctrine, all based on experience. What I discovered is the human mind creates dogma and doctrine. Even if we break through and have total, whatever, awakening, enlightenment, as it settles back down, as it contracts back down, we then develop beliefs about what we just think we did or saw or realized, and then it can turn into belief. So I think there needs to be keep working to loosen that back up until there's no belief, no knowing, no, I got it now. It's just
Right.
resting in freedom, so
Yeah.
I wanted to add that because coming back to what you were just bringing up, I think is very important for everybody. And I continue to do that to this day. In fact, for me, part of my path, you might say, is what we're doing right now. Discussing it, looking at it, sharing. Yeah. I'm interested in anything you say because we sort of, one, reinforce or also give new viewpoints. And as part of the integration and stabilization and normalization that occurs after what I would call initial awakening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I like that you clarified that, and also the idea of doing this, having book studies, conferences. It's almost like once you I would say get bit with the true self of your true nature, you're no longer in charge. It pulls you to itself. It pulls you to the experience of things that resonate. And, we use the words and then also the personal self identity. It actually starts the search. And then as one discovers the direct experience is palpable, it's and the nature is it is itself, and it's you. it sort of it takes the driver, it takes the steering wheel for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's like maybe even in physics they talk about potential. There's a ground of being that has a potential. The ground of being, let's say, is our true nature. That is what we are. But at the same time, as an expression, each individual an expression of the ground of being, just to use that word, it contains all this potential for, once again, this realization and integration and beingness. You use the word being. It's a beingness.
Yeah. Yes.
Beingness while in the multiplicity. And then we got to sort of, at least for me, sort of get used to that, sort it out. It's like constant delight and joy. While it has a feeling like investigation, it is not trying to figure out the truth. It's trying to sort of like understand what you've already been through and how do you live this way. And I've been doing that for a lot of years.
Yeah. Well, so what was it like? I mean, the reason I was interested in your age in India, and then your married status and kids, because you had an awakening as a young man, and then you had your family.
Right.
I'm a little bit envious of that. I'm curious of how that played into being a family man, being a father, and how did that awakening experience play into your life in those those relationships?
It's I feel fortunate because now, as I'm in more groups and talk to more people, if somebody has this life-changing experience mid-career and are their kids are in teenage years, or I mean, that is a lot of adjustment, and you already have a lot of stuff in place. that you need to now maybe rearrange. We don't
Yeah.
know.
Right.
But for me, I almost hadn't even started my adult life in a serious way when I went to India. Coming back, now for 4 years there, I was a counselor in the neighborhood youth corps in Austin, which gave me a certain amount of stability, and I was working, earning money. But when my first child was on the way, I felt like I had to get serious. I was in a poverty program and I was at sort of like poverty wages. So that's when I moved to Los Angeles and got serious. Also, that's when I got on this other path called Radhasoami or Sant Mat. And it was a path that said, whatever culture you're in around the world, you can live by the scriptures, whatever's popular in your culture. Just do your duty, fit in, don't proselytize, and meditate every day. So it actually gave me a lot of stability and a way to live, which was actually, and even though I was having satsang in my home and going to meetings every weekend and all this, I learned how to keep all this sort of in the background and be out here, having developed a persona to do business and be a normal person and raise children. So I was able to integrate it by working on it sort of like in the beginning. And I think it's very helpful for people who run into this maybe in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whenever. Like, how do you fit this in? How does it all work? Because it can be pretty disorienting for some. And so that's how I did it. This other path I got on, even though it was more rigorous than TM, it gave me a certain stability to live in the regular world and keep this thing going in the background. Now in life, I can say anything I want, and I have nothing to uphold or sort of promote. I'm a free agent.
Right. And how do you say, can you say the name of that? Was it a Swami?
Radhasoami, Swami spelled Soami, Radha, Radha.
Okay.
And there's different strains of it.
What's the foundation of the
There
teaching?
was a Sikh, there was a teacher in the late 19th century in the Punjab that broke away from the Sikh tradition in that the Adi Granth, there was, I think, 5 Sikh masters. I can't remember, Satguru. Yeah, 5 Sikh Satgurus. And then they turned it into, we no longer have a living teacher, but here's the teachings, and this is where you get your realization. It's called the Adi Granth.
Okay.
The Radhasoami broke away from the Sikh tradition, even though they were still Sikh, in that they sort of developed the idea of a living master. Right. So the history goes back maybe to about 1500, and it included both Sufism, the Muslim tradition, Christianity, everything.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a doctrine, it wasn't a dogma.
Right.
So
it's an awakening tradition.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is. But that's, like I said, I discovered the mind still creates dogma and doctrine. So when I left that path in about 1991, I guess I went from 74 to 93. I was on that path. And I've been sort of the guy in the front of the room for about 8 years in my region. And that was not because I was any kind of superior, enlightened, conscious person. We just would have an election and I'd run the meetings. But when I left that, I thought, God, I just now have been through 2 things, TM, Radhasoami, and I'm telling people like I know what is for them to learn. And that's when I had my first direct awakening of, I don't know. And that was like a profound release and relief, because it was the truth. The truth was, I don't know. And then about 6 years later, I got a pretty big understanding of I don't care. Now that sounds a little cold, but it's a detached feeling. And
Yeah.
then about 6 years after that, I got, it doesn't matter. So
Wow.
my wisdom deal is I don't know, I don't care, and it doesn't matter. So
Those are all profound
yeah,
steps of
yes,
recognition.
yeah,
The I don't know. So you could identify with what you are, or what you are, or what is aware of this experience, doesn't know anything, and yet is everything.
yes, yes,
And
yes,
so you were having a self realization discovery
yeah,
in each of those each of those characters
yeah,
or characteristics. So I don't know, I don't care, and I don't care doesn't mean you don't give a damn. It just means there's the what doesn't know doesn't also doesn't need to care.
yeah. It's a release of attachment. I get is words are inadequate, but definitely you probably get deeper into caring, but I don't care in that I'm not attached to
Yes,
what I'm in.
yes, yes.
You know,
It's not the old I don't care, I don't
yeah,
give a
no,
damn. It's
no,
I don't care is the characteristic of this this unflavored presence, right?
yeah, yeah. It's
Words don't really work to
no,
try
the
to
words
describe
don't
it,
work.
but it do they we are working with the words, and I like where this is, how this is kind of
Yeah,
this, you can't really put handles on what we're talking about.
no, and everybody has their own way. Every little winding path is very individual to that person while sharing universal characteristics. Because I should also go on and mention that, like after I got out of Sant Mat, within a couple of years, at one point, my daughter asked me to go to church with her. She was in her teenage years. And what it was sort of an independent, free rock and roll church. And of course, my daughter asked me, and I went. And it was, about 500 people every weekend at this junior high auditorium. And the minister was the lead guitar and had hair down to his waist. And it was one of those charismatic or Pentecostal hands in the air, swaying with the strong feeling. And I'm going, and I went, and so I'm going, maybe after a month or two, I'm going, am I turning into one of these people? Because it was very rousing. So I'll make this quick. From there, I went to another church. I started looking at the Christian faith, but at a mystical level, the charismatic, or anyhow, I found my way to an Episcopal church in Beverly Hills, of all places. I became a lay Eucharistic minister, and I led centering prayer meetings every Sunday for 8 years. And I got to meet Thomas Keeting, who had been a Trappist monk, and he was one of the founders of centering prayer. So that was my re-entry into that was me really understanding what so-called normal life
Yeah,
was. I
right.
mean, I'm part of the church. I'm on the prayer team. I'm wearing robes, and I'm leading centering prayer. But these are all more like normal people within a Christian faith.
Yeah.
So I did that for 8 years too. So
Wow.
yeah,
When you went from so not knowing, not caring, what was the third one?
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's Byron Katie. Whatever happens, I don't mind. Is it doesn't matter. And yet all of those things they do matter,
Yeah,
but not to the one who doesn't have an agenda. To the
Yeah.
one that is realized, there begins to be this this presence, this this essence of being. It begins to lead the way. So it's the thinking mind that's being disconnected from the from needing to work.
Yeah.
You're retired. You retired that one early.
Yeah. 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 All of this fits together. And like I say, it falls into place in each individual's unique way. Um, yeah, it is fascinating, and it never ends. My experience now is that it never ends. It just becomes more fun all the time. That's
Yeah.
my particular take on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's delightful and joyous.
Yeah. Did you did you teach any of this to your kids?
Then now here's an interesting thing about Sant Mat. They say, my teacher said, don't indoctrinate your children,
Hmm.
because you can only ask for initiation at age 25. They want you to be a full adult, and you have to live at least 6 months following the precepts that you're going to take as vows. You have to do that at least 6 months. You have to go through an interview. So they want people that have decided they want to do it, not people that were indoctrinated. So even though I had a picture of my master on the credenza by the dining table, I raised our children vegetarian, and we never drank. So they knew we were already a little way out of the mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
but we did everything we could. And this is what my teacher encouraged, is to just raise them within your culture in a good fashion. And so, no, I did not indoctrinate my children.
Right. And you were pretty open to going to the churches and
Sure.
doing the rock and roll church
Yeah,
charismatic thing with your daughter. And so you stayed in a open an open experience.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the avoidance of dogma. Even now, anything I say, I don't have to defend. I mean, I'm not given beliefs that, oh, here's the way it is. And I can't explain it, but it just becomes. And as you said, and I don't know much, but I hear the referral to Byron Katie. It doesn't matter. I don't have to defend anything.
Right. Right. And when you were in business, did you find that you carried the principles of awakening, of awakeness, that experience in your business life?
I didn't necessarily, I definitely carried the behavior patterns. I mean, can you imagine how many business lunches? Because I would meet with clients a lot. And here I am, a vegetarian back in the 70s. And, I'd go, well, is there any chicken broth in the sauce? I'd have to go through all these questions. I also didn't eat eggs, so I was a pretty strict vegetarian. In business meetings, nobody ever asked me, Jim, how come you order like that? They didn't want to, first in business, they didn't want to hear it. But so I brought the basics of how to live according to my teacher. But in terms of like throughout the day, I'm thinking about awareness and connecting. I probably didn't bring it in a lot as thinking. I just meditated for 2.5 hours in the morning, went to work, raised the kids, did what I had to do, and lived my life. Yeah.
Right.
These days, I think much more about all of this as I'm going about. I go to the grocery store. I'm relating to other humans. They don't know I'm doing it, but I'm relating everywhere I go. Yeah.
Yeah.
These days.
Right. And how would you for someone that is listening, it sounds like you had a spontaneous sort of a pull at a young age, and oh my God, you're watching Krishnamurti in his heyday. Did you meet Krishnamurti also?
Never, no, never met
No?
him. No, no.
What a great model teacher, though, at a
Yeah,
young age, to have him as a mentor or as an example.
it was fascinating. It was the answer to my confusion, the finding Zen and Krishnamurti and Alan Watts, and then the whole what I could glean from the psychedelic movement and everybody. It was like a mind expansion, and it was more part of the culture. You could just find it. Not easy to find books. There was no metaphysical bookstores. There was nothing. But I found D.T. Suzuki and Alan Watts and Krishnamurti. I mean, those are, I could find some writings. And yeah, it was just there. And an impulse arose within me. And of course, I can't explain that. It was just there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have over 50 years as a spiritual in your spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And many different facets of that. What would you say for people? It sounds like meditation really started you on your journey, and extreme meditation, in my view, when you did the Maharishi thing for 12 hours a day. Oh my God, that's like that. I don't know how people do that.
Yeah.
But I really feel that meditation it causes people to be still enough to notice what you're noticing, and initial and then allow the quiet presence to reveal itself.
Yeah. I think that's a nice way of saying it. I still meditate every morning. I'm not trying to accomplish or achieve anything, but it's just the way I start my day. I do believe it has value going up to awakening, let's say, and then post awakening, it helps integrate and return to. And you said it very nicely. You just sort of can get into a state of very stillness. You can, and by the way, TM is what I call effortless meditation. We use the term meditation. Boy, there's a lot of types of meditation. Okay. This is one that is no striving, seeking, trying. There's no nothing. You just introduce a mantra that's designed to sort of go to subtler and subtler levels of your mind, and then go into nothingness or the source of all thought.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the way it's explained, but it's also my experience. And I get into where I'm sort of examining nothing. And I understand now that Dzogchen Buddhism, their meditation, and that's a direct path. That's a direct way. They try to get you into an awakening experience through inquiry, is my understanding. And then they have non-meditation. They call it non-meditation. So effortless meditation can lead to non-meditation. And it can also, I think, even create the neurological foundation for a stress-free, tension-free, relatively. A little stress comes up, you can dissolve it pretty fast. So I think it's a good thing to do, but I would not say that anybody has to do it. I find it very helpful. Yeah.
And so you every day, what is it, 15 minutes, an hour, 30 minutes?
About 30 minutes. About 30 minutes. Yeah.
And it's just with your eyes closed or open?
Yes. I still use a mantra. Over the years, I've used different mantras. And even in Sant Mat, our meditation was 5, it was called the 5 Holy Names. and it was a type of repetition. But I've gone back to using effortless mantra, and there it gets very like wispy and in the wind. Words can just float away because they're not important. They can't capture the subtlety of the entry into no place. But you can practice it. You start and then you go. And
What would a mantra be?
Well, typical mantras. There's what's called the seed mantras. I think bija mantras, and the TM mantras were supposed to be that. And we were given mantras that I would give an initiation based on a person's age and gender. But I think now it's just on age. But a typical one could be everyone's heard of Om, or Soham. Now, this is saying it verbally. If you think it and then let it go without effort, it becomes a very different thing. It is not the vocal representation. It is first recognized as a thought, then a subtler and subtler thought. But you're not trying to do it. It can change. You're not trying to hold on to it. You're not trying to make it happen. And you're almost letting go. In fact, letting go. Here, the vocal I'm doing now, letting go. It's almost similar to the way you're thinking it. So I wanted, and I noticed we're probably going to run out of time in a little bit. I wanted to get back to this one thing about how we talk about this with others. I've come to really believe now, because I'm in several groups that are all sort of based on non-duality or awakening or awareness, that is very, very helpful to get into conversations like this. And that the equivalent is, we were born, and as an infant, we're just so wide open, and then within maybe, 12, 18 months, we start getting our identity. Our parents and friends and everybody's going, oh, look, that's you in the mirror. Look, your name is Jim, and then you start, so you build up your identity. You go into young childhood, then adulthood, and then you're fixed. You think you know who you are. You've built an identity out of consciousness.
Yeah. So
now, as we sort of go over that and come back into our recognition, and it can be shared recognition of non-duality or non-being or no thing, sharing it and talking about it is part of almost like, we became an adult with an identity, and now we're losing our identity while still being able to function in the world completely. But having conversations about that, like we're doing now, I think that's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And it helps everybody in their own unique way.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's non-personhood. It's discussing the experience of non-personhood, or in living in a bodysuit, living in a body-mind experience, fully knowing this is not your true self, this is not your true nature, and your true nature can't be seen by any description.
Right. My faith, even I meditate every morning, but I like the direct path or direct awakening experiments or pointers. Now, because I think you can get there just like that.
Yes.
If one of these pointers really works, like, what is looking, like if you're pointing this way, what is looking back out is at what you're pointing at. And if then you can rest in pure awareness or be that, it's then beyond words. And if you come out and say, oh, this is what it was, well, then you're back in duality.
Yeah.
But any way you can to get that experience. So I like direct pointers and experiments now very much.
Yeah. I like to open a meditation with what is it that is aware
Yeah.
of this experience?
Yeah.
And without giving an answer, just to recognize what is it that is aware of this experience,
Right.
and this is what you are. This is you.
Yeah. You become the answer,
Yes.
but you can't say it.
Yeah, you can't say it
There's
because
no
then you,
voice.
yeah, as soon as you put a word or you make an object out of
Yeah.
it, you've
Yeah.
made,
Right. Right.
you brought it into time and space. But
Yeah.
it is a good investigation question. What is aware of this experience? And and then of course you go deeper with that form of inquiry.
Yeah.
Does this awareness have an age?
Yeah. Yeah.
And does this awareness have a gender? Well, you've just narrowed it down to, oh my God, this is isness. This is eternal, present.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Recognizing no boundaries. Do I have any boundaries to my awareness? Is there any real distance when my eyes are closed between what I hear and what I feel and what I think? And, and am I here located, or am I here everywhere? And all of those are investigations that just are profound when you experience it, when you feel yourself everywhere as I am everything, so
Yes.
it's profound.
Yeah. Moses got the wrong transmission. Sorry. Love you, Moses, but you were talking to you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that whole period of history, that's just perfectly fine. But
Yeah.
here we are now. Here we are now.
I know.
And the now that was then too, but it's now.
Yeah.
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 Wow. Well, I knew I was going to really love having this conversation with you, Jim, and we could continue. In fact, I might write you and see if we can have another run at this kind of conversation. It was, and in fact, you live near my daughter and 5 of my grandkids in
Wow.
you're in San Antonio area, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, my daughter and 5 grandkids live in Schertz, which I'm not sure where that is from where you are.
Yeah. Pretty
But
close. Yeah.
well, I think what that means to me is when I come out to see my grandkids, you and I can
Sure.
we can sit down and have a meal or something.
But
And
that would be fun. Yeah, very much so.
yeah,
Wow, that's great. 5 grandkids. That's marvelous. Good for
yeah.
you.
And I did the opposite of what you did. I raised my kids as Christians, and then I became a non-Christian, and they all thought, "What happened to Dad? He
Yeah,
lost his mind."
that's
And
right.
there was a big attempt to lose my mind because I realized that Christianity was just it was a piece of the answer, but there was much more to be discovered.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
grateful for the
And,
Christianity. It helped me to stabilize a life, a family, that wasn't drug,
yeah,
dependent or alcohol. I let go of the alcohol and the drugs because I had this culture, this Christian culture that I really was very devoted to.
right. It
And,
gave you
and,
the
and
structure. Yeah,
yeah, it gave me a structure for life. And then I had a real draw to really know what the teaching of Jesus was, the real teaching of Jesus. And when
yeah,
I started to hear, things that they weren't right in the teaching of Christianity, I started doing my own investigation and realized that was only part of what his teaching was.
yeah,
And I feel like, and now I see that the true teaching of Jesus to his disciples and the true teaching that he really was expressing was the non-dual teaching. It was a direct path.
Sure.
More akin to Buddhism, or it was definitely self-realization. It was the true Yogananda sort of discovered it in his
Right.
search
That was
for,
an influence of mine also, Yogananda.
yeah,
I mentioned that. Yeah.
yeah,
I and my father are one is an expression of pure non-duality.
yeah,
But in the religious context, the word our father, my father, already is a dualistic
yeah,
idea.
yeah,
So it's held as sort of a concept,
yeah,
like, and he had it, but we're down here but
yes,
now what we're talking about is the oneness, and it's for everybody,
yes,
and it's accessible.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. It's everybody. It's the essence of, I mean, it's actually, there's not even everybody because it's prior to that even.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great experience for me. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, Jim, and I look forward to meeting you in
Yeah,
person. And
that's
maybe
right.
we'll do this again.
We'll get together. I
Yeah.
appreciate this very much, and I enjoyed it very, very much.
Yeah, it
I
was
wish
great.
everybody well. I
Yeah.
wish
Thank
well to
you.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you for being part of this podcast. And that is our show, folks. And thank you for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you at, actually, we just finished, when you watch this, or watch and listen to this podcast, we will have just finished the Many Paths One Self Pure Presence Conference. And you can still take a look at those 20 or 24 speakers that we had at the Pure Presence Conference, and take advantage of that for
Wow.
yourself. And Jim, I'll see you at the book study, and thank you for being part of this podcast.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.